This is the XBOSoft BlackLine webinar on how to achieve and maintain high-quality SaaS software in the cloud. I am Alan Thank you for joining us. We don't have a full presentation, just a fireside chat. So why don't we get started? Okay, first let's go ahead and we have Howard Goldstein with us. He's with the VP of Marketing with BlackLine.
Hi, Alan. How are you?
Very good, Howard.
Okay. We also have here from BlackLine Donna McCollum. Okay, and she's the manager of QA for BlackLine.
Hi, Alan.
Hello. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I managed the QA services for BlackLine for the past 4 years, and one of my key functions is being the liaison with XBOSoft and overseeing the functional and regression testing that they work on for us. I previously worked at SunGard in treasury management and trading software.
Okay, very good. And we also have with us Phil Liu, who is the CEO and founder of XBOSoft. Phil?
Hi, Alan. Hi there. Yeah, we've been working with BlackLine since 2008 on and with Donna on their QA, and I've been working with the project from the beginning, so all the way from manual testing to where we are today.
Okay, very good. Now, before we get started, just let the audience know we're muting all the attendees just for a clear conversation. Feel free to ask questions at any time via the chat bar, and we'll fit them in where appropriate. And any contact information and how to get the slides, we'll provide that information at the end of the webinar. So with that, let's get started. Howard, why don't you tell us a little bit about BlackLine?
First of all, let me say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I guess this particular webinar is all global at this moment, so I want to welcome everybody and thank you for participating and sitting in on this webinar. Let me give you a little history about BlackLine. We're a Los Angeles-based financial software provider. We operate globally. We were the first to market account reconciliation software, and currently we have over 475 clients, of which many of them are in the Fortune 500, and we have more than 58,000 users worldwide. Now, we also have a very unique situation where many of the accounting firms have their personnel are certified in implementing BlackLine, so we have a professional certification program for the Big Four and other accounting firms. So we have a few hundred certified implementers throughout the world. Next slide. As I said before, we're global. We have users in over 89 countries, and we have offices in the United States. We have 5 offices in the United States. We have offices in EMEA, in London, Amsterdam, and in Australia. Next slide. So what we do, okay, I'm just waiting for the next slide.
Okay, that's the BlackLine client.
Okay, we're having a little technical issue, but what we do, let me just go through some of the our clients as the slide gets updated. As I said earlier, a lot of our clients are in the Fortune 500. So we have clients like Costco, AT&T, Chrysler, Hertz, chain, Kimberly-Clark, Northrop Grumman, New York Times, just many, many very, very influential companies, household names, just throughout the world. And here's the list that comes up: United Airlines, so Salesforce. So we're big and within the global community, and that's why we're in 89 different countries. And it's really just been a great product, and people really enjoy using it, and it saves them lots of time and money and energy. So next slide. Well, let me tell you what we do. Okay, right now, if you're not using an automated system to do your account reconciliation, you have different data and accountants working on account reconciliations kind of in a vacuum with binders and internal and external auditors asking questions: where's this, where's that? And before you know it, you have this big mess of documents and binders and people going back and forth with no control and no visibility. And at the end of your cycle, whether it's a month-end close or a quarterly close or a yearly close, at the end of that cycle, you kind of will look like this. This is very familiar to accountants. Next slide. That's what we found that accountants look like after they are doing their close with manual processes. And now what we offer, next slide, is we take all that information from the ERP, from the general ledger, from the subledger, we put it into one location, which is BlackLine in our SaaS application, and now everybody has visibility and everybody's working off of the same information. So it's rules-based. There's a lot of different things that you can set up, but all of the information is real-time, and we automate that interface. Everything is automated, and so clients save a lot of time, energy, money, as well as total visibility. So from controllers have visibility, CFOs, etc. Next slide. We have 6 different modules, and that's the financial close platform or suite. And we like to say we're simple, secure, on-demand offering, and we're everywhere. Because we, again, since it's a web-based application, you have visibility throughout the world. Okay, it's real-time, controlled process, and the data is, you have data integrity and total visibility. So we provide efficiency, speed, and visibility. We reduce costs and risks, and it's a controlled financial close, which is so, so important in today's, what's happening around the world today. Next slide. Okay. Here's just a couple of examples of some ROI. We had an independent company come in and do ROI studies, and for example, we have Midwest Vaco with ROI of 495% in the first 2 months. Cox Communications 227%, and EDMC 138 in 10 months. So they reduce paper. There's no more binders. There's no more storage. Accuracy, visibility. I keep saying it. The process is improved. So, and a much faster close. Next slide. With that,
Okay.
I'm going to turn it over back to you guys.
Okay. Thank you very much, Howard. That was awesome. Okay.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. Now let's go and just have a little chat here with Phil and Donna. And, you know, BlackLine is growing very, very rapidly. And you have a situation where you're agile, your development cycles getting shorter, and yet have to maintain a very high quality. Your financial requires absolute accuracy. So how do you face this dilemma and have, you can't test everything, but accuracy still has to maintain high? How do you maintain that dilemma?
You're right. It's difficult to test. However, we're using agile processes to produce client-facing features. These processes allow us to break down complex tasks into small, self-contained components which are testable. Let me explain a little. We have a daily build which also signals our handoff to XBOSoft. So we have to apply a testing strategy depending on the context of the day's accomplishments. Because our releases are organized in terms of updated functionality, we're able to work with XBOSoft and pinpoint areas of testing with a high level of confidence while minimizing the risk.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, let me fill in a little bit about the risk there, Alan. We work really closely with BlackLine and Donna, and we think about and determine risk based on quite a few things. One of them would be the probability of an error, function criticality, function frequency of the usage by the users. Now, we've been working with BlackLine since 2008, and I mentioned that before, so we've been able to accumulate a lot of data and on what users are using, as well as the probability of error. So that really helps us to at least know what our risks are and be able to prioritize our test cases. We also track and organize our test cases so that we can get to the higher priority ones first. And I think probably what's most important in terms of reducing risk is the domain knowledge that we have and being able to test those most critical parts, as hard as we're saying, in the financial close process. There's just nothing better than a guy that really understands that process, and you could say that we've been certified as financial close testers, I guess you could say.
So how do you get, I know your goal is 100% regression testing, but is that always possible? Can you meet that goal? I know you talked about risk assessment. Is that how you, so how do you continue that?
Well, we are always striving for 100% testing each time we go into regression. But obviously that's not always possible. We currently concentrate our resources testing around the risks and resources available. With Agile development method, it allows us to get closer to 100% coverage with each iteration. We work very closely with the developers and the product managers to finish this, to complete as much coverage as possible.
Bill, have anything to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we treat everything in context in terms of allocating our resources. So, we don't necessarily execute all the test cases because we know that a lot of the test cases have a very low probability of finding a defect. So sometimes, depending on the type of build, it may be better to have our testers be doing exploratory testing. So that all has to be taken into account when we look at the test cases that are going to be executed.
Okay. So how do you track these defects from your regression tests? I know you mentioned.
Can you say that again? How do you track our?
Because you talked about exploratory testing. You mentioned how it's very, very effective. Maybe not very methodical, but very effective. So how do you track these defects from your regression tests? You want to try that?
Yeah. Let me let me first talk about our exploratory testing. I think it's important to think about test cases versus exploratory testing. I was just talking about that a minute ago, and we always think about how much time it takes to find a defect, and whether it's more important to use test cases or more important to use exploratory testing. And in general, in the testing world, I think everyone knows that exploratory testing will generally find more defects per unit of time, especially for new features. So we really have to, depending on the type and the amount of new features are being released, we really use that as a gauge in terms of where to put our effort.
I'm I'm just going to elaborate a little on what Phil said. We always try to let them know what type of release we're working on, whether it's defects primarily or new features. And for the new features, we definitely focus on the exploratory testing so that we can find as much defects as possible prior to the release. But if there's mainly defects, we're going to rely very heavily on the regression testing and the test cases.
Okay, that's a very good explanation of exploratory testing and how it fits into your overall testing plan. So, I mentioned it before. Let's go back to the how do you track these defects? Do you have a tool? Do you just do it by paper, or how do you do that? It must get very complicated at times.
Well, we have a software that we have been using. We track not only the regression defects, but all defects anytime, however they come into us. It could be regression testing, exploratory testing from our support, our implementers. We are always tracking those defects. So we do use a software tracking system. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, very good. Now, what software tracking system do you use?
We use Rally, and we use this.
Go ahead.
And we use this along with XBOSoft to do analysis of the defects and work with product management and development to triage these defects, prioritize them, and work those into the iteration and releases. So this is a tool that works very well for XBOSoft and BlackLine to communicate on our process.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just add, Alan, that
Sure.
when we log defects during regression testing, our team members are constantly documenting these defects and remediating issues, and we have kind of a 24-hour defect identification turnaround period, and we track defects over time and by function. So we have a really good idea of where the defects come from, the rates of defects per function, as well as find and fix rates.
Okay. So, is performance testing a part of the regression testing? Is that separate? I know your product must have some very rigorous performance testing methods. So how does it exactly work? How do you ensure that performance requirements are still met?
So to me, I think of them a little differently, but both are actually very critical. So we're conducting the regression testing at the same time, usually, as we're doing the performance testing, or during the same period. And our user base is growing every day while our functionality is expanding, so we're constantly testing to ensure optimal performance for our clients. We need to optimize our usage and provide the best performance we can for our clients, and the rigorous performance and regression testing are both critical to this.
Yeah, let me just.
Sure.
Well, you're going to have another question, Alan?
Yes, we just got a question from the audience from Amit. Phil, you mentioned that tracking defects over time. Do you have experience tracking defects back to the requirements? How do you track it? That's a question from Amit. Question.
So your question was tracking defects back to requirements?
Correct.
Excuse me, Alan? I'm not sure I heard your question right, but I'll just answer what I thought I heard your question was that in terms of tracking defects back to requirements, actually we have in Rally we're able to go all the way from requirements to test cases and then a defect. So we are able to, in I guess you could say a linear fashion, be able to go all the way back to the requirement, and which is an important point. A lot of defects arise out of unclear requirements. So we're able to do that kind of analysis and figure out, well, is it a problem with requirements, and how do we fix those problems in the future?
Okay,
I'm
very good.
I'm just going to elaborate a little on what Phil said. We are actually, because we were just for product management and development, we added a field in Rally to indicate for each defect whether it was a spec defect or an actual code defect. And this is just, we're using this to help our product management group improve their specs to determine where we're seeing issues.
Okay.
I think we were talking about performance testing just a minute ago before that question came in.
Yes, let's go back to performance testing. Very good. So, of course, performance is very, very critical, but how does it compare to accuracy? Is it secondary, or you try to do it at the same level, or how do you balance those two? And how fast does a financial package really have to be?
Well, that's a good question. Financial packages are not expected necessarily to be as fast as, say, maybe an e-commerce site, but BlackLine has set a very high bar for performance, and our users demand performance as well as functionality. So to answer your question, we have to be fast and accurate.
Fast and accurate, very good, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, fast and accurate. Yeah, that's like a baseball pitcher, right? We're always working on developing new performance scenarios to ensure that we continue to maintain performance. So we're constantly benchmarking and noting any kind of degradations or sensitive areas and working with the development team to let them know the performance status. And we have to pick and choose our performance scenarios that we run according to risk, just like we do our regular test cases. It's just another form of testing. And for instance, like for financial software at the end of the month or the end of the quarter, those kinds of functions are, even though they're not used a lot, they're very, very important. And so we put a high priority on those items.
Okay, very good. I know that performance issues like number of users, normal load, peak load, those are typical performance issues. Are they also the same issues for a software as a service product? Or what's the difference?
For a SaaS product, the application must be written specifically for high availability and performance. As Phil said, we have to cater to what our users want and understand their priorities. For clients running reports at the end of the month, we can't have them waiting. The second element in our infrastructure is how flexible and scalable the infrastructure is. Of course, that's a business decision beyond the realm of this discussion, but it's definitely important. Fast and flexible infrastructure that's scalable.
Yeah, let me just add that, with all performance testing, I think the most important thing is developing the user profiles so that we can really get a realistic idea of what exactly a peak would be, how many users will be doing a certain thing at a certain time. Obviously we're not going to be testing 10,000 people logging in at the same time. So we have to be able to allocate the users according to what they would really be doing. And as Donna said, financial system users don't expect a split-second response time for a quarterly report, across a whole global company. But I think the most important thing to remember is that we always do our benchmarks and work towards improvement.
Okay, you kind of touched on this already, but I have a question from the audience. Can you expand on how you use scenarios to test? What moment for performance testing? The question from Anna.
I didn't quite hear you, Alan.
Can you expand on how do you select which user scenario to test? And what part of performance testing? So, selecting your user scenarios test. How do you choose that?
Yeah, I think your question was how do we actually set up the user profiles and choosing the user scenarios?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot, like I said, we've been working with BlackLine since 2008, so we have a lot of data to be able to analyze, and we have a lot of logs in terms of the functions that are used. So we use that and historically analyze it to determine our user profiles.
Okay. And then we also have another question. How accurate is the data that you put into BlackLine? Because I presume you get lots of data from external bureaus like Experian, Equifax, and so forth. And I know that must be a real issue. How do you deal with that? And that's a question from.
I'm not quite sure I know what. I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Okay, accuracy of data, the data input into BlackLine. Mm-hmm. This data is provided by external bureaus like Experian and Equifax. How do you ensure, how do you deal with the accuracy, and how accurate is it?
I see. Well, in terms of, an ETL process, extract, transform, and load, we have a lot of specialized tests that are used to ensure the integrity and the accuracy of that data. So that's a whole nother discussion in terms of BI, business intelligence testing, and data verification and loading and so forth. There are a lot of specialized routines that we use to ensure the integrity of the data.
Okay, very good. And how often do you run these tests, the performance tests? Every single regression test?
Well, as Donna said, we're always running performance tests. So it's just a matter of, which scenarios. We have people dedicated to just performance, so it's just a matter of picking the scenarios that we run each day.
So understanding your users, benchmarking, improving, periodic efforts, sounds like it's a good formula for success there. Let's take a look at test automation now. What percentage, I know you want to be able to automate as much as possible, but how much can you realistically automate? What percentage of the tests do you aim to automate?
That percentage really is going to depend on the maturity and the stability of the product and the modules and features we're testing. So we're always looking at the application and assessing what can be automated. So we want to do that as much as possible, but with each release we have to review and determine which functions that will get the best effect from regression testing that's automated.
Yeah, right. We like to think of automation as insurance, and so all the basic things are covered, and that a build didn't break anything. Of course, the more the automation is better, but automation does have costs, just like any other insurance. So we currently have a little over a third of the functionality automated in terms of testing, and we work to increase it over time, which is sometimes difficult because there's a lot of features, a lot of advanced features in the software.
Right. And what tools do you use? Probably just everyone.
Excuse me, Alan, you were asking what tools do we use?
Yeah, what tools do you use? Because tools, I know it's probably BTD, you've got all kinds of tools, and people just know what graphics we use.
I think you were asking about the tools. Right now we're using HP QTP for automating the test, but it's not really what tool you use. It's really more about being familiar and developing a good framework with whatever tools you choose. And we care about the coverage and the quality of the software. So the tools they're just that, just a tool.
Okay,
Right.
very good.
Yeah, Donna's, some of our customers want us to use a specific tool, but as Donna said, it's not really that important. We have a lot of people that are skilled in different tools. I think what's most important is the structure and the automation framework that we're able to build, and the flexibility within the framework to be able to adapt to the software. And software, the structure, some menus can change and so forth. So our structure of our scripts has to be very flexible.
And what percentage of your testing is automated, and what level of resources do you devote to it? What percentage of resources?
I think the percentage of resources that's devoted to automation is going to depend a lot on the software, and that is also going to be determined by the team and its capabilities. Not everyone can do automation, just like not everyone can do performance. So the allocation really has to depend on your specific type of software, I think.
Yeah, we think of automation as an investment. So, it takes time to develop a framework, and, if you think of our automated scripts as like a script library, we use these scripts over and over, and depending on the nature of the product, we can't always maintain a constant percentage of automation unless we have resources dedicated to it. So, BlackLine is pretty consistent with what we see in all of our clients, in that they're constantly desiring to have more automation.
Okay, we have a question from the audience. Jeff wants to know, does the QA control strategy usually include evaluation, inspections, and testing throughout the entire life cycle for the software as a service application? Let's see if I got this question right from Jeff. So, how much do you use in your control strategy for the evaluation and inspections?
Okay. Evaluation and inspection. Well, from a testing point of view, when we get requirements and user stories, we work really carefully with Donna to make sure that we're interpreting the user stories correctly in order to be able to transform them into good test cases. So, we go through several rounds of inspection in working with BlackLine in that area. So I think that's what you mean.
I hope that's. I think that's what Jeff was getting at there. Okay.
Okay.
So we have. I think the key point in this whole automation discussion is that the tool does not matter as much as the framework and the people that you have. And that's a very good point and emphasis. So let's take a look at a few more general questions now. Do you do your test or regression testing on other platforms? Different browsers, different devices, mobile. Everyone's talking about mobile now. So tablets. So how does the BlackLine work in all the different devices, browsers, platforms, and so forth?
Currently, our business is a little different than business to consumer or B2C software companies. Most businesses have set browser requirements, and so currently we support IE 7 and above and Firefox 9 and above. We are going to be moving more towards mobile and tablet types of devices, but right now the businesses and the companies that we work with don't really require this at that point, but that is definitely in the future.
Right. That's what we see in all of our customers, all of our clients actually, is that they're moving towards a mobile platform, and it really adds a level of complexity to platform coverage, especially with the different versions of Android. So we have a mobile lab in our test environment that we have several hundred phones that we use and we share amongst our clients, especially with the smartphones, which can get quite expensive.
Yes. So we have a question here from Christine. This kind of goes back to some of our earlier discussion. She wants to know, how do you know if a requirement has been fully or reasonably tested? It's more of a generic question.
How do we know if a requirement has been tested?
Has been fully or reasonably tested?
Well, we have a traceability matrix that goes all the way back from the test cases to the requirements. So from the beginning, we know the test cases that cover a requirement, and so when we're selecting our test cases for execution, we're also keeping that in mind to make sure that all the requirements are covered.
And just to add to that, I can say I know our product management group, who is responsible for creating the specs, they'll go in periodically and review the test cases created for a requirement to make sure they're comfortable with the testing that's being done, because they're the ones that are defining what they want.
Okay, very good. Now, we have a special challenge here. We have a dedicated QA team, but it's a remote QA team. And yet, it is very, very important that it's integrated in with development and the product management, support management. How does that work with the relationship between BlackLine and XBOSoft?
I think Phil and I have both already said this, but we, meaning BlackLine, work very closely with XBOSoft daily, and we use any kind of communication that's going to facilitate that. I mean, maybe chat, phone calls, WebEx, whatever is needed. And I know the team has been, you have to be very flexible on both sides. I work while XBOSoft is working on the testing if they have issues, so we don't want to block them, and they are always very flexible with whatever we need. If there's an emergency release or something, I just work closely with them on what's changed and what we need to test exactly, and they are always flexible when our requirements change, which they frequently do.
Your requirements change? Yeah, I think we follow the sun method, as Donna was saying. I think Donna also works in the middle of the night as well. It does, most of it's not like it was in the old days where you had a waterfall development method and our customers, our clients were throwing their software over the wall and saying, okay, test it, here's a big release. But we're working every day and testing new builds every day. So it's a little bit of an adjustment, working in an agile mode, but we do get to work a lot closer with our clients and tend to develop a tighter relationship.
Okay. We have actually, I just mentioned the follow the sun methodologies that more and more popular nowadays. We have no teams that are working while the other team is sleeping, vice versa, and that is a very effective way of working. We have a follow-up question from Justin. He just wants to know how much time and how it's possible to avoid defects. And right now we're talking about finding defects. Is there any emphasis, and how do you look at avoiding defects?
I'm not sure I can hear your question, Alan. Let me see.
Wants to know about avoiding defects, because right now
okay, I see. So your question is how to avoid high defect density and reduce the number of defects found during the test phase, especially during acceptance testing.
And more to avoid rather than just find. Is there a way that you can put quality in ahead of time so that you don't have to find as many defects because you have your practices and so forth have avoided them at the beginning?
You know, I think it goes back to the requirements and the user stories, and as Donna was saying earlier, the product management folks in product management work closely with us in ensuring that our test cases are really high quality and that they match the requirements and the user stories. So I wouldn't, certainly don't want to underplay that. That's a big part of our testing process. So I would say that probably takes up a good percentage of our time. So that's clearly an inspection type effort. And so when we work with the product management folks at BlackLine, we're constantly thinking about how we can have better coverage.
And have you found that that actually does a good job at avoiding defects?
Oh yeah, I mean we continue to improve over time in terms of the amount of defects that with each release.
Okay, very good. Okay, just to summarize what we've been talking about. We talked about a very agile environment here, daily builds, and so correct me if I'm wrong here, Phil. We get a download every single night. Is that correct? And then we have to go through the testing of the product because it is a very dynamic environment. So we get daily builds and we get daily testing. And the goal, of course, is 100% coverage, risk assessment when that's not feasible, and then fast and accurate. I like your analogy of the pitcher. You have to be accurate, but you have to be fast. And that's a very good way of looking at it. Of course, accuracy is of prime importance, but performance, accuracy is of prime importance. The performance is a very close second. And I think you mentioned, Phil, that automation is used where the product is mature and stable. And so I think BlackLine has been able to achieve a good level of automation because of their stability of the product over time. And you mentioned that QTP is used, but the quality of the people and the framework of the test is actually more important because XBO uses tools for whatever the customer requires, and that's not that important. But the quality of the testers, the quality of the QA people, the framework, and the relationship between the integration of all the teams, that's what's important. And the XBO QA team and the BlackLine development and support team, we found that even though they are in different locations, it works very well together. To follow the Sun philosophy is a very effective way of thinking. And do you have anything you want to say in summary there, Phil? I know that the seminars here, this is as is.
Yeah,
okay.
I just wanted to add, based on the last question, there's a tail end of the question about the applications in the cloud and how that impacts our testing, and I think actually it makes our testing much easier. We used to work with a very large desktop software vendor, and we're constantly downloading builds, and so we're saving a lot of time by not downloading builds, and it makes for agile testing much more efficient.
Okay, we have a few more questions coming in. Here's one from Josh. He has a very small QA team, and he has no automation, and he's not sure where to start, how to set up an automation team, and where to begin. Can you just talk about your experience on Phil and how you can help him start start thinking about automation?
Yeah, I think you know, a lot of people think that automation is just magic. You know, we'll just do some automation and, you know, reduce our testing effort. And I think probably there's a lot of steps to get started in automation. One of them is figuring out if your application is suited to automation, choosing the right tool for your application, and choosing which part of the application should be automated first, because like with everything else, we want to automate according to risk and priorities.
So, where to start? You would say that he would start at looking at the areas of his product that's most stable, and that's pretty
Right.
and most mature.
Yeah, that's right.
And since you only have a team of 5, maybe it's not realistic to go all out with automation, but at least devoting one person to it and having them start with the areas that have been well tested. Maybe that's where he should start.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. I think with a small team, you know, I think that something you have to consider is that the skills in automation are different than what is needed for a normal QA person. So they almost have to be a programmer. So that person has to have those types of skills, and it's always good to have 2 people working on it. If you can't dedicate at least 2 part-timers or 2 people that can dedicate some time. Just like in coding, you know, you have extreme coding where you have 2 guys looking over each other's shoulders, and you make sure that the code that you develop is according to best practices or company practices. The same thing goes with automated scripting.
Okay. We have another question come in from Pritham. His application is not on the cloud, but they're moving to the cloud. And since they're just starting that process, do you have any words of wisdom on how to go about making that transition, and especially from the QA and testing perspective? Do you have any pointers for them?
Yeah, I think probably the most important issues in terms of moving to the cloud are the performance issues in the different locations of your customers. So, you know, a lot of the cloud vendors, they will have their infrastructure will be set up with servers in different locations. So, and the users will be assigned to a primary server. So, based on the user base, you have to work closely with your cloud vendor in how they allocate the user IDs and the locations of those user IDs to the right servers in their infrastructure. So I'd say that performance testing is probably the most important thing in the cloud vendors that we work with.
Very good point. Making that transition is not easy. Okay. I think that's pretty much concluded what we have. We have follow-ups. Any requests for information, please send it to services at XBOSoft.com. You can get a copy of the slide. Any other questions you have, so feel free to BlackLine services at XBOSoft.com, and also follow us on Twitter at XBOSoft.com. I think we have, thank you very much for coming to our webinar. We will have the next one coming next month, and we will give you information on that on future webinars. And I think we have. I think we'll close off the questions now, and thank you very much for coming. And this is the BlackLine and XBOSoft webinar, and thank you for attending.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Donna.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.